What role did Hillary Clinton, then Hillary Rodham, play in Watergate?
Well, there's a book. The book is called "The Crime Without Honor: The Crimes of Camelot and the Fall of Richard Nixon," written in the 1990s by the former chief counsel of the House Judiciary Committee. And he describes terrible things about Hillary Clinton. And the one that I find the most interesting, she's a very recent graduate of Yale Law School, Hillary Rodham. And he says the staffer running the impeachment inquiry, John Doar, was beholden to a professor at Yale Law School, Burke Marshall, who was going to be Ted Kennedy's attorney general if he won. Okay? So Hillary Rodham was a recent graduate of Yale, and she was a go-between. She was carrying messages back and forth between these two people. And she did things that were hugely political. For example, the Republican minority on the impeachment inquiry kept demanding comparability. What about acts by other presidents? You say Nixon abused power, that he's responsible for abuse of power. What about other presidents? How did they respond to allegations of abuse? So Hillary's assigned the project. She goes back up to Yale and lines up the chairman of the Yale History Department, C. Van Woodward. And he gets 4 other history professors, and they work round the clock to research and write up every president from Lyndon Johnson back to George Washington and how they interacted with the Congress. And of course, there's always tension between the two branches, allegations of abuse. Thomas Jefferson won't build the submarine. Well, that's abuse. We gave the money. You can't sequester. He wants to fire somebody. Well, we like that body. We don't want him to fire them. So they produce this manuscript, which looks too good for Richard Nixon. It says these tensions between the two branches have gone on since its founding. So they suppress it. They do not share it with the Republican minority, particularly Congressman Wiggins out of California, who was Nixon's principal defender on the House Judiciary Committee.
And this is a document produced with federal money?
Oh, absolutely, without question. I don't know that they paid them, but Hillary's trips back and all the communications.
But it's part of it. It's part of it, the judicial system. It's part of our justice system.
Well, yes, but this is the impeachment inquiry by the House,
of course. But so this is not some freelance project.
Oh no. This is
but they suppress it.
Surely, and it never comes up. We decided it wouldn't be helpful for them to see this stuff. That's what Rodino and Hillary say. Months later, the professors are pretty damn proud about their work product. You know, they did this big study, and they publish it as a book. Out of nowhere, I happen to have a copy of the book.
Responses of the presidents to charges of misconduct, with C. Van Woodward writing the introduction. Interesting. Does that come out before Nixon's resignation?
Oh, after.
After. Right.
Of course. Of course it comes out after. It would have been helpful if it had come out before.
So Hillary Clinton works for who?
Technically, she reports to John Doar, who is the head of the combined impeachment staff. I think there were 45 lawyers on the combined impeachment staff. I think they were specially hired by Doar. The person you want to read is a lady named Renata Adler, who was on the staff at the time, then went to Yale Law School, and then became a writer. And she wrote one article about the first year reunion of the impeachment staff. And she said, you know, it seems to me in retrospect, it was something of a cover-up. Nobody told us about what came out under the Church Committee. The Church Committee was a Watergate reform
to
look into the abuse and misuse of the CIA and the FBI. They looked at international and domestic. And she says, the only thing I can think was we were part of a cover-up because we weren't told about any of that. And that would have changed everything. And then there's another article she did when she was editor of New York Magazine. And she wrote a book about the last great days of the New York Magazine. And she said in the book, I refused to run a review of John Sirica's book because he was so corrupt. And his son was working for Newsday, and the New York Times and others responded badly and pilloried her. And so she licked her wounds, and then she published an article just dumping all over John Sirica. You know, his parents were bootleggers. He intentionally tossed the first 13 cases he was supposed to try under the Volstead Act. He dropped out of law school twice. He was an organizer of boxing matches in the district when it was illegal. He's just a terrible, terrible guy. So if you want to know more...
Sounds like a criminal.
Well, it does sound like he did criminal activities. He said that nobody was more surprised than he was when he passed the bar. He'd already moved to Florida to resume his semi-pro boxing career. And then he shows up as this petty tyrant, you know, and he does all these really strange rulings as a judge. He may as well have sat at the prosecutor's table.
So what is this? I mean, this is also amazing. I thought I knew a lot about this. I didn't. As you've watched the criminal prosecution of Donald Trump as he, you know, becomes the Republican nominee, have you noticed similarities between what you're seeing now and what you saw 50 years ago?
Yeah, I call them parallels, but it's just unbelievable, the parallels. And I don't like to write about Trump because I don't have any inside information.
Yes.
But the suspicion is there based on what I've proven about what happened in Nixon. So the J6 committee. J6 committee is loaded with Democrats. Trump has no representative on the committee, nominal Republicans, but no defendant.
Adam Kinzinger.
They don't look at why the Capitol was unguarded. They start at a certain point and go forward. They've misplaced or lost records that would appear to be helpful to Trump people. But, they're gone. We don't have those interviews. The charges, I think this is astonishing, just astonishing. Trump is tried in New York, and they got to get a felony in order to have an extended statute of limitations. You know, the fix is in from the beginning. The defenders don't know the charge against Trump until the prosecutor's summation at the end of the trial. Yes, you faked your accounting, but there has to be another felony. And they didn't name the other felony. So today it's one of three, doesn't have to be a majority of the jury. That's why it's on appeal. The prosecutors decided in a secret meeting with Sirica that the law was too unclear as to whether you could indict a sitting president. It's assumed today, but there's no decision. So they decided, rather than litigate that, let's take all the evidence that we've gathered to indict Nixon, send it to the House Judiciary Committee so they can impeach Richard Nixon. Now, there's different standards on indictment. Only prosecutors have access to grand juries. Grand juries are something like a star chamber. It's conducted in secret. Your attorney can't be in the room with you. You can't put on your own evidence. You can't cross-examine witnesses. You don't know what they said about you when you get there. You don't know what they said about you when you leave. So it is a horror show if it becomes used for political purposes. Congress doesn't have access to a grand jury. So Congress in its investigations is limited. Here's these specially recruited special prosecutors, and they say, what we know the House Judiciary can't find out, We could only do it with a grand jury. Now, parallel to your grand jury operating in secret, and it's got to stay secret forever. What the witnesses say, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yes.
By federal law, no exceptions. Okay? No, in essence, no exceptions. But when you go to prove that in court, same evidence, the Fifth and Sixth Amendments come into play.
Yes.
Got to be sworn testimony, got to be evidence, got to be cross-examination, got to be a public trial, got to be a jury of your peers, all this stuff. So it balances out, even though the grand jury is a holy terror, particularly if you're called. I don't know if you have. I've never been called in front of the grand jury, but terrify you. What the prosecutors worked out, brilliant, was let's send our evidence up to the House Judiciary Committee and we'll call it a presentment. Because the Fifth Amendment says you can't be charged a federal crime except by presentment or indictment of a grand jury. Nobody's really sure what presentment means. Let's call it presentment. We'll send it up. Now, for a second, assume what the grand jury knows is garbage. It's untested, okay? It shouldn't be and should never see the light of day. If it's got to have the counter tests. But they send it to House Judiciary and they say, oh no, got to be secret. Can't be revealed to anybody. So Nixon's defenders don't know what he's been charged with. Kind of out of nowhere, he's charged an unindicted co-conspirator in the Watergate cover-up. Both special prosecutors said publicly, we would never do that to Nixon because he's named, but he can't come into court to defend himself because he's not charged. He's unindicted. But they did it anyway.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. We hope you'll subscribe to it. And by the way, you can hit the little bell on there and get notifications every time we produce a video. We hope you'll do that also.